What up, everybody? It's Ty Crandall here, and welcome to the webinar. I'm excited you could join us today. So today, we're going to be looking at business credit reports. Today, we're going to be talking about the business credit building process, but then what we're going to be doing is looking at the business credit building process through the eyes of credit reports. We're going to go through and kind of map out, for example, the steps that we see in building business credit, and we're going to look at where people are in their real business credit reports, so you can really see basically what this process looks like basically through business credit reports. We could see real results, and we're going to look at some interesting credit reports today. People that think they have credit that don't actually have any, people that don't think they have credit but they actually do, people that have high scores, people that have low scores, people that have lots of paid as agreed accounts and they have low scores. So you're actually going to get to see firsthand what this really looks like. And what else I think is cool is we're going to get a chance to look and see what this looks like when it also basically comes down to actual recommendations for credit. One of the biggest and most important reasons somebody wants to and should build business credit is the fact that business credit controls if you will get a loan, the terms you will pay on the loan, and the actual amount of a loan you will get. So we're going to see firsthand today by looking at real business credit reports how the credit quality determines the amount that you're being recommended with or being recommended for from the business credit reporting agencies. Why is this important? Because we've seen people that have $3 million companies get denied for $10,000 credit cards because they had low credit scores only because they had zero credit at all. So it's very important because if they would have even got one or two trade lines and would have had a score, then they could have been approved for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 cards. But because they had no score, Experian recommended them for nothing. And we're going to take a look at those real recommendations so you can see exactly what this actually looks like. And like I said, we'll even take a look beyond that at some very interesting credit reports from some companies like we'll probably jump into the Trump organization. Why not? We'll probably look at the Clinton Foundation. Why not, right? Election's done, so nothing I can show you here would have any effect on your vote. So we'll dive into some cool stuff like that. We'll look at some actual clients. We'll look at some people that aren't actual clients and take a cool walk through some actual business credit reports and answer some questions along the way. So as a matter of fact, let me probably convert here to chat. So if you are in the live session, you can actually answer any questions here. I do not know what just happened there, but whatever it was not what I intended to have happen. So let me go there, and then let me actually bring this back up. I got all kinds of crazy things. Here we go. There's my webinar room. Okay, so let's dive in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some actual business credit reports to get us started today. And let me, I guess, start with one here, and we will take a look and see how this goes. Okay, so first of all, let's kind of give an overview of the business credit building process, and then what I'm going to do is go in and show you what this looks like on a real report, right? So per our finance suite, we understand that first we help a business get set up credibly, then we help them get set up with the business reporting agencies, right? We help them get the DUNS number with Dun & Bradstreet, get set up with Experian, get it set up with Equifax. Then we come into round one of building business credit. So in this round, we start getting approved for actual vendor accounts, places like Quill, places like Uline, for example, where somebody could buy office supplies, shipping supplies. So these are small vendor accounts. So what we expect to see on a credit report is we expect to see $100, $200 to $500 limit accounts that are net 30s, right? That's how we start building business credit, is we start with these vendor accounts that will give us credit even if we have no credit, that will give us credit without a personal guarantee, that will give us credit without a personal credit check, and they will give us credit initially, then they report to the business credit reporting agencies, okay? A lot of them report to D&B, so we're going to be looking at Experian today, so keep in mind the people that we're looking at these Experian reports probably have even more trade lines that report with D&B, but we're going to take a look at Experian. And as they get these net 30 accounts, then those report to the business credit reporting agencies. And as a result of that, they're then able to move in, start monitoring business credit, reports and then start coming in and getting tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 credit, right? So this is when we start talking about Amazon and when we start talking about Staples and Sherwin-Williams and Macy's and Budget. And a lot of these, we know here, are revolving accounts. Okay, some of them are still net until they get about 6 accounts or more established. And then once they start to get these accounts, then they start to get approved for higher limit accounts. So what do we expect to see on a business credit report? Well, what we expect to see is right here in round one, $100 to $500 net 30 type of accounts. And then we expect to see that after they got some of these, they would go from a low score or no score to a higher score. And then with the higher business credit score, we would expect to then see that they start moving into round two, which are revolving store credit accounts. Now we start to see limits shoot up. That's what we would expect to see on a credit report. We expect them to go from $100 to $500 limit net accounts to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 revolving accounts, right? That's the promise here, is that they're coming in and getting the business credit established. Then they're moving into high limit store accounts. And then they start getting into even more accounts here in 3 and 4, right? They eventually get to a point where they're coming in and they're getting fleet accounts, even some cash credit accounts. Some require a PG, some don't, okay, that are available after they've got about 10 to 14 trade lines. So this is the process of building business credit. Now, don't forget, there's a way to expedite this. And one of the ways to expedite this, which is I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like, is this unsecured financing program. There's an unsecured financing program where somebody says, hey, I do have good personal credit and I want to get money for my business right now, even if I'm a startup. And on top of getting that money, it'd be cool if I build my business credit also. So this unsecured program works great for somebody that has good credit. They can come in, they can get approved for up to $150,000 in unsecured business credit cards. These unsecured business credit cards, if they have good credit, report to the business credit reporting agencies. They have much higher limits. So then that would mean that they can kind of skip some of that stuff in step one that we just looked at. They don't need as many net 30 accounts because what do we care about? We care about trade lines. So if they've got, for example, 5 to 6 accounts, or let's say 5 accounts, they can move on to tier 2 credit. Well, we don't care if those 5 accounts are vendor accounts or these kind of credit cards. So again, what we're typically going to see is somebody that has good personal credit probably will go with this option because it's pretty freaking cool. They can get up to $150,000 in a short period of time. Even as a startup, it's no doc. They don't need tax returns. They don't need bank statements. They don't need any of that stuff. And these accounts report to the business credit reporting agencies, putting high limits accounts on their credit reports very quickly. And as a result of that, they expedite their business credit building. And again, the amount of credit they're being recommended jumps along with it. So in theory, this is all that we're talking about, right? So let's look at some actual business credit reports to see what this really looks like in reality. And then we'll kind of go back and forth here. We're going to jump a little back and forth to look at the business credit building process. And we're actually going to look at some actual results. So here is an Experian business credit report as an example for Castle Business Management. Now, this is actually along the line of what we just talked about, right? We just talked about the unsecured program where somebody came in and got a lot of money, even as a startup business, based on personal credit. The credit reported to the business credit reporting agencies and gave them a jump start on their business credit profile. So I'll show you exactly what this looks like. Now, we can see a lot of things on a business credit report. We could first of all see how long they've actually been established here. We can see how many employees they have. We can see sales. So guys, this is very important because a lot of people ask me about cash credit. They say, what does it take to get cash credit? Well, what you have to understand is that business credit reports reveal a lot of information. Your revenue, sales, the number of employees you have, the time in business, the time that you've actually been open, as well as all your credit information. So when you start getting into cash credit in higher limit accounts, then they often are factoring in some of these other things. So Home Depot, for example, is a perfect example of this for a store credit card, right? So Home Depot often wants you to have a lot of trade lines or they want you to have high revenue here of a few $1,000,000 or more, or they want you to be in business for 3 years. So it's kind of like if you meet one of those 3 criteria, they'll approve you. But if you go into Home Depot with 6 trade lines and revenue of $500,000 and employees of 3 and not long time in business, then there's a good possibility that what they may actually do is not approve you at all for a no personal guarantee card. They might require a personal guarantee because they want to see one of those 3 factors. A lot of other ones, like Lowe's, for example, will base it on trade lines. If you have a bunch of trade lines, which could be 6 or more, okay, then they come in and they don't really care about this other information as much. And again, it depends on how you manage them. So what we're looking at here is called an Intellis score. And Intellis score is the only score out of the 3, Equifax, Experian, and D&B, that is not based solely on payment history. What's beautiful about Dun & Bradstreet's Paydex score, and what's also beautiful about Equifax's small business risk score, is it's completely based on payment history. If somebody pays their bills as agreed, they get a good score. With Experian, their Intellis score is primarily based on payment history, but it does take in other factors like utilization. So in this case, we see a low score because it goes to 100. So 80 is, 90, 100 is a pretty good score. 23, not so much. Now, what does this mean? This is called a percentile score. So what 23 means on an Experian report is it means that 77% of businesses in the same industry, which the SIC is on here somewhere, right here, in this SIC code, okay, 77% of businesses in this SIC have better credit than this one does. That's what it means with Experian. Again, if you're looking at D&B and Equifax, it's literally based on how you pay your bills. But in this case, it's a little different because Experian says of everybody in this SIC, 77% of them score better than you do, that or have better credit than you do. That's where they get that score. The next thing we notice here is that somebody's being recommended for $17,000 in credit, which is pretty cool. They've been around for a year and a half. They're getting recommended for $17,000. That's not too bad. So I'm going to skip past a lot of other details here just to get to trade lines, and we'll see how they got there. Now, we see what we would expect. They started with some small net 30 revolving accounts. Remember, we talked about this. This is tier 1 kind of credit here, right? $100, $200, and then whammo, what happened here? They went from 100 to 22,000 to 13,600. Well, this is the unsecured program I just told you about. This is an example of a client that came in and said, okay, we followed the steps. We got $100, we got 200, we got some of these vendor accounts. How do we expedite? How do we get money faster? And we said, well, you need to have good credit. And they said, well, we don't have good credit. And we said, okay, well, then do you have a good credit guarantor? Do you have somebody that will sign for you as a guarantor on the business for this credit? And if so, then we can get you up to $150,000 in unsecured business credit cards. They said, yes, we do have a guarantor. The person signed for them. They got about $60,000, $65,000, I think, worth of credit. Only part of it reported on Experian, right? The other part reports on to D&B, but about $46,000, about $50,000 of that reports here. And here you go. So what they did was they started with these net 30 accounts that we would expect to see. They wanted to jumpstart, so they came in and got cash credit here. And then because they started to get these cash credit cards, let me zoom this in, make it bigger so we can all see it. Because they started to get these, then they started to get these other accounts with high limits. So here's the $3,600 account that they got right behind it because Experian's now recognizing they have these high limit accounts. Now, this is an interesting report to look at because as you see here, they have no late payments, none. Right? There's none. Date account, these are days beyond terms, 1 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, 90 plus. There's none that are late, but they're maxed out. See, high limit, balance 22. They're maxed out on almost everything. You can see right here. Here's their high credit limit. Okay, here's the balance that they actually have. And this doesn't actually show, this is the recent high credit that they've used, but they're basically showing really high utilization, which is why Experian scored them so low. But what's interesting is that even though Experian's still scoring them at a 23, they're still being recommended for $17,000 in credit. And you're going to see this here because even as we look at Trump's report, for example, he's recommended for a lot of credit, even though Well, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I'll just tell you that the score isn't as high as you may expect it to be and still recommended for a lot of credit. Why is that? Because again, the score doesn't necessarily always reflect late payments. It also does reflect some things like you're seeing here where the person's just overutilized. And even though D&B wouldn't care and Equifax scores wouldn't care, Experian and IntelliScore does care. So this is a pretty cool example here. We've got somebody that started with these net vendor accounts, $100, $100, $200. They wanted to expedite. They had a good credit guarantor. They added a good credit guarantor. They ended up getting $65,000 worth of credit, about 50 reported here. They've got it. They're utilizing a high percentage. And even though they're current, their loan or their scores are low, but Experian still saying, hey, these guys are cool. We'll give them about $17,000. Okay. So a great example here of what this unsecured program, where was I here? This unsecured program that we just looked at, the 0% unsecured program, it's a great example of exactly what this can do to a business credit report. Somebody came in, they got $60,000 in cash credit cards they could use. They had a guarantor in this case. They wanted to expedite the business credit building process. And then because of that, they're now recommended for $17,000 with Experian, as we just saw. So a really good example. Now let's look at some people that are not using their personal credit and see what their profiles look like. Now, what's interesting to note here is that look at what I'm doing. I'm showing you credit reports. You know why I can do this? Because it's public information. So this is the thing. Anybody can pull your business credit report by typing in just simply your business information. Here, I'll show you. Look at this report that we're pulling here. Just by typing in their company name, I only get one option and I can pull their business credit report. So this means anybody that has nothing else other than your company name can pull a business credit report. And this is why business credit building is so important, because not only will it determine the amount of credit you're going to get approved for, as we can see here what they're being recommended for, not only will the score determine if you get approved or get denied, but it also is public information. Anybody can see this and show it just like I am because it's public information, unlike consumer credit reports. So in this case, we've got somebody that has a 65 out of 100 score. So that's a fairly good score. They're being recommended for $13,600 in credit. And as we come in here and look at trade lines, we see that they followed the exact same process of building business credit we outlined. As a matter of fact, this is somebody that all the credit they have required no personal guarantee and no personal credit check for approval. Everything you see here, they got without a PG and without an actual personal credit check. And this, again, is an active client that did this using the finance suite, right? They came in and used the actual business credit builder available here in the finance suite to go through, follow the steps, and build exactly what you see here. So when we look at what they have, they started with net 30. Remember? We talked about this. This is exactly what we would expect to see. They started with net 30 accounts. Here's a $200 account. Here's $100, $400, $200, $100, net 30. And then they start making the jump. So now they start making the jump up to higher limit accounts. Okay, now again, they opened in 2014, but they haven't been building business credit that long. This is reflective of somebody, I think, that's about 90 days into the process of building their business credit. And they're already being recommended by Experian for $14,000 in credit because they have accounts, multiple, that they're paying as agreed. Isn't this interesting? Because think about this. Experian is telling somebody to give them $14,000 almost in credit, even though all the highest limit account they have on their credit report is $700. Why? Why is Experian doing this? Experian is doing this because look at all these accounts they have that are paid as agreed. So when you hear me talk about building business credit, you often hear me talk about what's most important are trade lines. Trade lines matter most over anything else. So in this case, what we see is somebody has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have about 8 trade lines. So even with 8 trade lines, they're still getting recommended for $14,000. So if they go to their bank to get a credit card, their bank is going to pull their Experian business credit report and probably give them hopefully close to what their actual credit recommendation is, all because they came in and followed the steps that we outlined. They came into the business credit builder. They came in and they got started with these small Uline and Quill type of accounts. Okay, then they moved on to some other net accounts here in step 2. I think they came in and they got Amazon and Seton and some of these, and then those reported to the business credit reporting agencies. Report. Limits start to go up. Went from 100 to 200, from 200 to 400, from 400 to 700. We can't see the order here. This is the date reported, so it won't tell us when each account was open, but we start to see, and it makes sense. $100, $200, $400, $700, and they make the climb, and the climb is beautiful. So now they're getting access to all this credit, and they're getting a high credit recommendation from Experian as well. Okay, and again, and all this is done by them following exactly the same steps. None of this credit required a personal guarantee. None of this credit required a personal credit check for approval. Okay, and they're able to come in. Now let's take a look at another one of these type of examples, whether it be good or bad. Okay, so here is, and I'm just randomly pulling up some different ones so we can see this. So here's somebody that's being recommended for $3,000 worth of credit. They have a 51 score, which is not a great score. Okay, and let's go down and look and see what they have. So this is somebody that is not a current client. This is somebody that gave us their information on Periscope to let us use their information on Periscope. And if you go to creditsuite.com/scope, you can see our last Periscopes, and you can click right there to follow us on Periscope. So they let us use their credit report as an example. And they said, I don't think I have any business credit. Well, they did have business credit. They only have one account though. So they've only got actual one revolving account for $1,000 here that is reporting. So this would mean that they got an account that they did provide a personal guarantee for. They owe a large part of what their highest balance or highest recent credit is, which is why their score is low. Their payments are paid as agreed. They're 100% current, but their balance is close to the recent high credit limit. And because this is close, which is again, IntelliScore takes into account, their score is lower as a result of that. But again, what you're seeing here is an example of somebody that did provide a personal guarantee for a credit card. They got the credit. How do I know that? I know that because nobody's going to get a revolving credit card with $1,000 limit to start a credit profile without a PG. It ain't going to happen. So what happened here was this person didn't think they had it because they got a business credit card thinking it reported on their personal, it reported on their business. It establishes a trade line, which is good, but because they're overutilizing this account, again, their scores are much lower than they should be. And because they only have one account that is overutilized, not only is their score lower, but they're not being recommended for a lot of credit as a result. Now, there's a lot of other stuff we can look at here on a credit report, by the way. Okay, so we have any information down here, which the other reports had, this one doesn't. If they have any tax liens, which we'll see in future ones here, you'll see them here. UCC filings. Okay, we see here days beyond terms and how they pay their bills. Here's a payment and legal filing summary section. So it tells us the trade lines and UCC filings if they have any loans. We're looking at all that information right here as well. We're looking at date beyond terms if they have a bankruptcy, tax liens. We're looking again, here we go. This recommendation compares this business against similar businesses, right? Isn't that what we talked about? That their credit score is based on where they score compared to other people in their SIC codes. Okay, so here's from Experian. This recommendation compares the business against similar businesses in Experian's credit database. It's based on trade information, industry, age of business, and IntelliScore Plus. This recommendation is a guide. The final decision must be made at your company's business policies. But this is what they're actually recommended. We see quarterly score trends here, which I'm going to show you some really cool examples here coming up where you're going to love what you see with quarterly score trends. And then again, we see the same thing. So this person had no credit. They got that credit card, and now they are where they are now. Okay, and again, factors lowering the score, number of commercial accounts. Remember, we just talked about that. They only had one trade line, which was the problem. Risk associated with the company's industry. Okay, so we're taking industry into account. So let's see what industry they're in. It doesn't say here what industry that they're in, business address identified. So we don't have the industry, although it does say industry risk comparison. It doesn't tell us. Leasing balance, leasing accounts of balance is percentage of total. So this is exactly what we already know, right? We already looked at this. We said they don't have a lot of accounts and they're overutilized, which is their problem. And we can see here that here's their Intellis score. Okay, so that's one example of, again, not an active client, not somebody following the business credit building steps that we outlined, but somebody on there that hasn't yet began building their actual business credit case. That's a perfect example of somebody in that case as well. Now, here's another example, but a worst case, not a worst case, but an even worse example here, where we see somebody that actually has a 12 score. So they have a 12 score, and because their score is so low, Experian's telling them not to get any money. No, do not give this person money. Their annual sales are not high, 81,000. Very few employees. Not sure how they support 3 employees with $80,000 in revenue, but it's who am I to judge? Okay, and then we come in, we see they're high risk. We see that this tells me they just don't have any payments or very few payments, or they're paying their bills late. And we go here. And this is the only account they have, right? Again, not an active client of ours, somebody from Periscope that let us use their information as an example. So they have a balance of $500 owed and they're 90 days late. Perfect example. Somebody has not taken the time to build their business credit yet, but it doesn't matter because they defaulted on a communications account. So they got let's say a business phone number. They defaulted on the phone number for the business account. And then what happened was the company reported them to the business credit reporting agency as defaulted and put their score literally, well, not literally, but in the toilet, 12 out of 100. And now, excuse my language, but they're screwed, right? So how do you fix something like this? Well, what do you think? How do you fix this? Trade lines. The reason their score's low is they have one negative. It's the only account on their credit report. They don't have any positive. So this is somebody that's not built their business credit, and because they haven't built their business credit, one negative crushes their score because they don't have any positive credit to establish it. It's also too important to note that how long has this company been open? This company's been open over 3 years. Isn't being recommended for any credit at all, and has a really low score because they didn't take the time to build their actual business credit. And as a result of that, now they're unlendable, basically. They're not going to get an SBA loan. They're not going to get credit cards. They're not going to get any kind of business bank loan because their score is so low, because they have no credit established. Only one collection that, by the way, on Periscope, they were surprised to even know that they had anything on their report, didn't think they did, and now as a result of that, they've got problems. Look, it's important to note a couple things. First of all, Experian, Equifax, and D&B get information from all different kind of providers, including the people you get your phones from, the people you lease your buildings from, the people you buy real estate from. They get all the information from these companies. So even though you might not think they know you exist, chances are good they do know you exist, because even if there's no accounts reporting here, if they got this phone set up, Experian still could give them a 20 or 30 score just because they know this person exists and the person doesn't have any business credit. Second thing to note, notice something missing that you usually see on consumer credit reports. There's no creditor name. So on business credit reports, it's giving us an idea of the industry or the category. It's giving us a lot of specifics, but it does not tell us actual creditor name on business credit reports. Very big difference from what we would see in consumer credit. So how do you fix something like this? Well, you fix it by building business credit. If they would just come in and get some of the Uline accounts and the Quill accounts and the actual net 30 accounts that we help them get here in tier 1 of the finance suite, then what happens is then they would be able to move up. Then they would be able to come in, have trade lines to offset the negative, and as a result, they would come in and actually be successful with building their business credit. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me stop talking and show you. This is somebody that is an active client that's done the exact steps. So what they've done is they've come in here and they've built their business credit. So now we've got a 76 score. We've got somebody that's $15,400 being recommended in credit, not too shabby, okay? And then we've also got somebody here that's followed the steps, as we can clearly see, because look at their credit. They've got 100. And I'm going to save that. I want to show you that in a minute. $100, $200, $100, $100, 200. They've come in and started building their business credit. They're a couple months into the process, okay? They've come in, they've got vendor accounts. Well, I think this is, no, I've got to look, 90 days, whatever, maybe into the process. They've come in, they've got these small vendor accounts, net 30, net 30, net 30 accounts. They're just getting started here, so they don't have the high limit accounts yet. And as a result of that, they have a really good score and a good credit recommendation. Let me show you what's even more crazy. Look at what's at the bottom of this report. These are actual judgments. So you've got a judgment here, which looks to be the same one. It's filed, it's satisfied. So even with a judgment on their credit report, they're still at a 76 score being recommended for 15.4 because they built their business credit. They haven't even built it up a lot yet. They're just getting started. They're just building the initial trade lines here of $100, $200. But because they built their business credit, they offset the negative. Way different than what we saw before, right? We saw a $500 90-day collection account that dropped the score to 12. But this person's different because even with an $1,100 judgment, they built business credit, got the first stage done of vendor accounts, and because they got positive vendor accounts, the vendor accounts offset the judgment, and now boom, they're up to a 76 being recommended for 15 grand versus the person that had a collection worth less than half as much as this that didn't build their business credit and has a 12 score and isn't being recommended for any credit. You get it? So this is why business credit is so important. And it still baffles me because when we advertise on Facebook, we still have people that go, this is illegal. This isn't legitimate. It's like, are you crazy? Anybody can pull your business credit reports as I'm looking at right here and look at all of the information, your revenue, your employees, all of these different information. Anybody who wants to can see your quarterly payment trends. Okay, all this information, anybody that wants to can easily see this information. So this is why building business credit is so important. And this is why, because if anything goes wrong and you have a negative, then when you have the positive accounts, it offsets it. And again, didn't come in and do anything elaborate. They came in here and basically built a business credit with their actual vendor credit accounts. Now, let me show you another client report. Now, this client actually came in and has a pretty cool story, okay? What they actually did was they came in and they started their business and they had sold a flat screen TV, okay? And really two of my favorite clients, I was actually just texting with her last night as we were actually talking about her getting in and selling more business credit. And they sold a flat screen TV and sold a pickup truck, started their business, and as a result, knew they didn't have enough money, got business credit, basically used their business credit to come in and get the computers, the office furniture, everything they needed to actually build their business. And then this is what they've actually done. Okay, they actually, once they got it off the ground and they'd been about a year and a half actively doing something with the business, then they came in and did about 1.1 million in sales because they used business credit to fund their business to do it. You can see that they're being recommended for a lot of credit. I'm going to show you why. It's a pretty cool telltale story to why you want to get business credit. High score, 78, one of the highest we've seen so far, being recommended for 64,500. How did they do it? Well, let's look down here. First, we don't see any judgments or use collection accounts. Okay, we do see a UCC filing. We'll talk about that in a second. They did exactly what we talked about, but this is somebody that's more deep into the process. So far, we've looked at people 60 days in, 90 days into the business credit building process. Now we're looking at somebody that's been building business credit up to a point where they're 6 months plus into the process. They're getting cash American Express cards, for example, at this point. So how have they done it? They started just like we talked about, $100, $100, $400, right? $500. Remember we talked about on the last report how we see the climb. Here we climb 100, 400, 500, 700, and $800 accounts. Now we start to step up. Now we get away from net 30s, and now we start to get to revolving store credit, right? $1,800 here, $1,900 revolving credit here, $2,400 here. Now we continue the climb. So now we're up to $4,700 here, and then what happens is they qualify for a loan, and then they get a loan. Boom. 65.7. So now what they've done is they've built their business credit up 100, 400, 700. They start to see the climb, $1,900 accounts, $1,800, $2,400, $2,300 accounts, $4,700. Apply for loan, boom, secure loan, $65,000. Now what happens because they got this loan? Well, now they're recommending them for something very similar. They're being recommended for nearly $65,000 because they have a loan on their credit report for $65,000. And just so you know, that's what a UCC filing is. A UCC filing is just simply what the lender does to a credit report to tell you or to tell everybody that you have an outstanding loan. This is important because a lot of people talk to merchant cash advance lenders, and merchant cash advance lenders say, hey, do you report this on my business credit report? Sure, we report it to the business credit report, but they're not reporting it in a lot of cases as a trade line. They report it as a UCC filing. Now, in this case, they are reporting it as a trade line. We can see right here. So this is why you always want to clarify with a lender, okay? You want to clarify, do you report it as a trade line? Do you report it just as a UCC filing? And again, if it's a UCC filing, it won't help your credit. It just shows here. But if it's a trade line, then you get the benefit here. Why does that matter? Well, because look at that. Again, they're getting recommended for nearly $65,000 worth of credit because they actually came in here and got that loan. And again, we see the progress. I love this credit report. It's beautiful. Really, it is gorgeous because you see somebody that just followed the proper steps of building business credit. $100, $400, 500, 800, 700. Let's make the climb. Boom, 1,800, 2,400 revolving, 1,900 revolving, 2,300 revolving, 4,700 bucks. Okay, then we jump all the way up to loan. And actually, we've got a webinar on our YouTube channel and in our weekly coaching webinar back office where they were actually on and they map out what these accounts are. Even though we can't see from here, they tell you what the limits were on each of these individual accounts. But it's still pretty cool to see the final result of what happens when somebody builds business credit. So where are they at in the process? Well, they came in and built their round one accounts. Remember, we saw those $100, $400, $500. Then they jumped into step two. And this is when we started to see the $700. And then they started to jump. They jumped to the $1,500, the $1,700, the $1,800 is where they take that next jump to. Okay. Then they jump up to round 3 and 4, where we started to see the $4,700 account. And then boom, they qualify for an actual loan. Want to see it again? It was beautiful. Let's look again at a different one. Here's a different company altogether. Okay. Another person that follows the exact same system, highest score we've seen so far, 92 out of 100. Didn't get a loan yet, so not being recommended for as much, 22,200. So think of it like this. This person has been in business since March of 2015. This company's been open for a year and a half, and they're being recommended for 22,200. And by the way, they will be the first to tell you that they've done this in, I think, 6-7 months worth of time. And again, somebody else that follows us on Periscope, Mark, lets us use his credit report. Doesn't matter if he lets us or not. It's public information. But he offered his information up in one of our first scopes, and he's a perfect example to show. 300,000 in sales. So all those people that think you can't get a bunch of no personal guarantee credit unless you have $1 million in sales, you see here he doesn't. You also see here he's a nonprofit. Another important lesson. I get asked this question a lot. Can a nonprofit build business credit? You're looking at it firsthand right here. You're looking at an example where somebody is a nonprofit and absolutely has established business credit, has a good score, okay, and as a result being recommended for a lot of credit. Let's look at factors that lower the score. Number of recently active accounts. This isn't surprising because they're getting a bunch of new credit. They're building their business credit report or accounts. Number of commercial accounts with high utilization. That is something they can control. Ratio of balances to high balances. Length of time on experience profile. I love that. I love it. It's beautiful. So they're lowering their score because they haven't been on the report very long. They're like, I don't know how this guy did it, but he just went from like nothing to 92. And now we're giving him 22 grand, but we're still going to ding his score a little because he's doing it too fast. Yeah, we understand they're doing it too fast. Why are they doing it too fast? because, because of the business credit builder, because we show them exactly how to do it step by step. So now we show them how to do it in experience, like what's going on here? How did this person get started so short term time with us and rocket up so quickly? So here's one of the coolest things I've seen. I love this right here. So look at this quarterly score trends, and this shows you how fast business credit can be built. Here's one quarter, their score's 12. Here's another score, another quarter, their scores they're 10, 12, and then they jumped to 96 and 92. Look at this. A jump from a 10 and a 12 financial risk score to a 96 and a 92. How the heck does somebody do this? How does somebody go from a 12 credit score to a 90? Can you imagine that? On a FICO score, this is jumping from a 380 to an 800. How does somebody do that in one quarter? Look, here's one quarter, here's the next quarter, 12 to 96. I'll show you exactly how they did it. How they did it was doing exactly what I just showed you, building business credit. Got started with $100, $400 accounts, revolving, net 30, right? 100, net 30, revolving. Jump to 400, make an even bigger jump by starting getting a higher limit accounts here of $4,000, and then make an even bigger jump of $9,900. You know what's interesting about this $9,900 account? Let me show you. What's this say? Charge off. They got a $10,000 charge off business credit account, and their score is still a 92, and they're still being recommended for $23,000 worth of credit. Why? Because they built their business credit. Look at this. They've established enough trade lines to offset the negative. So there's a lot of reasons to build business credit. I don't talk about this one enough. You build business credit because as you get access to more credit and add more trades, you offset anything negative that you do. In this case, this is the biggest negative account we've seen on the credit report this far. $9,900. You know what's interesting? It's also the highest credit score we've seen so far. Why is it high? Because the number of trade lines they have paid is agreed 100%. Zero balance compared to $400. Zero balance compared to $100. $100 compared to 100, 2,000 compared to 400. They have some utilization not used here, and they've got trade lines, not a lot, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And of the 8, one's negative, but they still have a 92 score as a result of that. This is what business credit is on a real credit report. This is what this looks like. And again, a nonprofit, open a year and a half, where Experian is even freaking out saying, hey, dude, you're kind of new, which is why we're going to go ahead and limit your score. And they went from one quarter knowing nothing about business credit, using a system here like the business credit builder, the same as your clients can do, and then come in and jump up to 96, 92, make the jump up of recommended credit to 22,000 plus with no loan. And with a high credit limit of 10 grand defaulted, 4 grand not defaulted, still being recommended for 22,000. Now, I'll tell you the other part of this is that Mark gives me updates of where he is. And he just actually he was just on Periscope 2 weeks ago with us. Last week, I think, as well. And he just got approved for a $1,500 Staples credit card. He just got approved for a $3,500 Amazon credit card and got a $7,500 Apple credit card. None of them required a personal credit check. None of them required a personal guarantee for approval. So he just got another $14,000 worth of credit, which will be on the report that's not here yet, following exactly the same steps as we talked about at the beginning, going through getting the accounts. What accounts did he get? He was on Periscope, so he actually told us. He got Uline, he got Quill, were two of the initial starter accounts that he got, and I think he said he got Gimplers, and then he also got Office Depot. So these small guys you see, we don't know which one are which, but I can tell you that the Net 30 and up here, this is, I think, the Uline and Quill. And then he also got a Gimplers, and then also moved on to, I think, a revolving account with Office Depot, which you're seeing here, and then makes the jump all the way up. So pretty cool to see what this actually looks like. And this is really, I mean, the epitome of business credit success in the early stages. And now he's to a point where, you know, a few months into the process, I think going on like 4 months, I don't remember the time frame he quoted, in actively coming in and building business credit now to a point where getting $3,500 Amazon, $7,500 Apple. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine getting a $7,500 Apple account, $3,500 Amazon account, no personal guarantee, no personal credit check? If you can't, it's because you don't know enough about business credit. If you can, then you understand exactly what this could do for you and your customers, because this is exactly what the process looks like in real time, following these exact steps. So that being said, let me look at a couple other things, and then I want to show you, and we'll wrap up with some really cool reports that I bet you're going to probably want to see. So I'm going to give you another perfect example here of a customer that I'd actually talked to. And I'll tell you the actual story here. I was on her podcast and we talked about business credit, and she said something about the age of her company. And again, you probably want to hang out with me here because we're still going to look at the Trump organization's report. We're also going to take a look at Clinton Foundation too, because why not, right? It's post-election. We'll dive into both those. So in this case, I said, hey, well, I'll pull your business credit. We'll take a look and see what your business credit is. I did it right on the podcast, which kind of freaked her out. So you can see here, they do about $500,000 in sales, 4 employees, being recommended for 18,300, good credit score. And they've come in here and they've got, basically, they didn't start with a lot of trade lines. They basically did this with a loan. So they came in, they got a loan, and because they got a loan, paid the loan off, paid it as agreed, then as a result of that, they were also able to come in and expedite if you get a loan. But what's funny about this and what's interesting about the story is that then she said to me, she said, well, let me tell you something. Let me ask you, and let me actually show you this. Now, this isn't completely legitimate on her part because she had opened this company after opening another one. So she changed the name basically of the credit account, right? So what happened was then she said, well, hey, let me ask you a question. Pull my husband's credit report. I'm interested in seeing what his credit report is. And I'm going to show you this. This is a perfect lesson to be learned here. 29 score, $1,000 credit recommendation, somebody that's been open for 10 years. Here's the sad part of companies that don't build business credit. Here's the flip side. Somebody that's been open for 10 years, they're only being recommended for $1,000 in credit and a 29 score. What did they do so wrong? The answer is they did nothing. They have no trade lines. This is somebody that only had a loan. There was a UCC filing. There's never been a trade line. He never cared or knew anything about building business credit. And now he's been in business for 10 years and is only being recommended for $1,000 credit. But let me show you what's important. The bureaus know about him. There's no history here, right? There's no trade history. And look at what the score is. The score's in the toilet. We see this a lot. We see this a lot. If somebody tells me their score is 28 to 30, then what I say is scroll to the bottom of your report and you'll see you have no trade lines. And they go, yeah, I have no trade lines. 28 and 30 is what Experian tends to default with when they see somebody that they know exists that has no trade lines. So anybody that thinks they can sneak through life and not build business credit, it won't work. Here's a person that snuck through for 10 years. And now what do you think their chances are getting a loan? Not good. Because not only is their score low, they're not being recommended for anything, not because they did one thing wrong. This person did nothing wrong. All they did was nothing. They didn't build their business credit. Experian knows they exist. Experian gives them a bad score. They struggle to get credit cards. They struggle to get loans, all because they didn't establish any business credit. Wow, it's been a wild ride, so let's end with something fun. We've looked at good reports. We've looked at bad reports. We've looked at exactly what it looks like each stage of the business credit building process. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and wrap up with some fun reports, just some fun ones post-election that we might want to just take a look at because it's kind of cool to be able to do so. So Clinton Foundation here is not very established, actually. They don't have a lot of credit established at all, being recommended for $4,700 in total credit, a 28 credit score here. We can see the contacts are William J. Clinton, president. Okay, so pretty cool to actually look. 280,000 in sales, number of employees, 7. Okay, so they just don't have much credit established at all. And we can see that based on this. You know, a $3,500 credit card, which obviously had to have been a personal guarantee because their business credit's not established enough without the PG, small account here, and probably another account that required a personal guarantee because, again, there's just not enough credit established for them to actually qualify. So, again, low score because they've got high here, high balance compared to this. They've got some kind of utilization here, but not a lot of credit that's available here. Definitely a group that hasn't done a very good job of building their actual business credit. All right, so let me ask, who here would be interested in seeing the Trump Organization's credit report? Okay, and do you think this is good or bad? Okay, so I got all kinds of questions here, which I'll get to your questions. I missed all of your questions, so my apology for missing them all until now, but I'll get to them. Okay, I don't want to hold the suspense. All right, so what do you guys think? In the comments of the people that are here on the live one, do you guys want to see Mr. Trump's, the Trump Organization's credit report? Yes, no? Do I have any comments here? People saying they want to see it, they don't want to see it. I don't know. We'll see. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm not going to hold you in suspense, so we'll come back to questions. So here, let me get this pulled up. We'll take a look at what our new president's business credit report looks like and see how that pans out. So here we go. Trump Organization, as you can see. Needless to say, the score is definitely not high, right? Of all the reports we've looked at, the lowest score we've seen so far of a 5. Credit recommendation is obviously higher than anything we've seen, 308,000. We see what is that? It's $2 billion, I think, in sales we're looking at here. 15,000 employees. Pretty cool. Doesn't matter if this is a Trump Organization or any other big company. Pretty cool to look at a credit report of a really big company to see exactly what these things look like. And here's Mr. Trump here as president. We can see here the time established back in 1981 is when they actually got established. Financial risk scores a 5, which means very high risk here of default. Current financial stability risk score 23 out of 100. Again, very high risk. And then we also see here the legal filing summary and a bunch of other stuff. And then we see basically the trade lines. So we see a ton of trade lines here. We definitely see legal filing. So we definitely see some tax liens here for pretty small amounts, 526, judgment here for 30, which is pretty interesting because we heard about all types of people chasing him, I think, in the news, but we don't really see that here. There's really no outstanding judgments where anybody's won successfully in the courts. And we do see a lot of trade lines. We see a ton of trade lines here. 2,500, 13,000, 9,500, 418,000, 304. So a lot of loans, a lot of trade lines. We definitely see some net 30 accounts, a lot of net 30 accounts, a lot of revolving accounts. So we're looking at a combination here of revolving credit. We're also looking at a lot of different high loan amounts, a lot of other different things. And we see a ton of payment beyond terms, which is interesting. So for example, on this account, 100% of the time they paid 91 days late. On this one, 62% they paid current, 100% current, 54% current, 46% 1 to 30 days late, 100% current, 71% on this one, they paid 61 to 90 days late. Here are some other ones. Here they paid 100% current. Here they paid 50% current, 50% 1 to 30 days late. Here's a leasing contract here with 91 days late at 100% of the time. So obviously a lot of things here. And we'll look at what they say is lowering the scores, but we already kind of have a feel for that, right? We already see here that we see, which is pretty cool because we can actually see inquiries here. So what they're inquiring for. This is pretty scary stuff that anybody can see this stuff on your business, right? Anybody can see any of this stuff on your business credit report. The amount of inquiries you have, what companies you're linked to. And it's funny because I actually looked at the one I was telling you about where I was on her podcast. I said, well, hey, I'll pull up your competitors. We pulled up her competitors and we found out that 1 quarter last year, they paid a lot of stuff late. And she goes, oh yeah, it's because of X. So it was funny to actually see on a real credit report that they had a good payment history and went late during one particular quarter. So again, and we pulled that up for her competitors. She had us pull up 2 competitors and look at her competitors' credit report. So that was a pretty good example, right? Pulled hers. She was freaked out, didn't even know it could be done. Then pulled her husband's upon her request. And then she said, I said, you want to look at your competition? Who's your 2 biggest competitors? We pulled their reports. We looked at their annual sales. We looked at their employees. We looked at their payment scores. We looked at the highest amount of credit they had with their payment trends. This information is available to anybody that wants it, which is why everybody needs to build business credit. We see the legal filings, which obviously affects the score. We see the amount of lates, which obviously affects the score. And let's see what other factors they're telling us are tied into this. So number of accounts that are current, okay, versus the number of accounts that aren't current is part of why they're saying the score is so low. Percent of total balance that is seriously delinquent. We saw that. We saw a lot of 90 days later, a lot of accounts that were currently in default. Percentage of seriously delinquent commercial accounts. We saw a large percentage of those. Percentage of delinquent commercial accounts. So basically, somebody's got a lot of accounts that are being paid late, and as a result of that, that will result in that 5 score. And we just saw firsthand exactly what that looks like. So pretty cool way to wrap this thing up, right? So ton of questions. So now we've got a chance to see Clinton Foundation. We've taken a quick look here at the Trump hotels, and this is actually Trump organization. Well, this is Trump organization doing business as Trump hotels. So again, he's got a lot of entities. We're just looking at one of the different entities here, but still pretty cool to be able to see all the information here that's available on a credit report that anybody can get. As if they wanted to get it, you can get this right now. You could go to Experian, DB, Equifax, and pull credit report. And anybody you want to pull credit report for, you have the same access that anybody has access to. And it's also cool to see they can see tax liens and judgments and inquiries and everything as easily as you've seen here. So let me go in and I'm going to wrap up with questions. I have a lot of questions today. So let me start from what I think is the newest and go down, I guess. How long can the public records stay on business credit reports? You know what? I'm not positive of that question, actually. I'm not sure I know the answer, and I need to look into that. So I would like to say that they could stay on there indefinitely, but the actual answer really is I'm not 100% positive. I think I know, but I don't really like to even guess unless I'm positive. So I'm not positive. But if you email info@creditsuite.com, I'll look into it because it's something I absolutely should know. And I'm be the first to admit that I don't know everything. And I can get you that answer. Regarding the credit report showing number of employees, how does that affect the process when the person is a sole proprietor or solopreneur, or when there's only one employee and when the startup revenue has not been established? So how would that work? Well, how that works is it just simply comes down to how many employees you're counting. So for example, in my state, when I file my annual report, they ask me how many employees I have. And that information is available on public records. So from Florida, I can go to sunbiz.org and they ask me the amount of employees we have, and this stuff just becomes public information. So that's how they know how many employees you have. And you're saying, how does that affect the person? Well, a solopreneur, well, it doesn't affect you. It will just show on your credit report that the number of employees you have is low, right? It's going to show that the number of employees you have is one. But usually won't show one. Like when I file for my annual reports, I'm pretty sure they gave me a range. Like it says, how many employees do you have? 1 to 5, 5 to 10, etc. So I think in most states, you're going to enter a range. They'll enter the range here. And so far as you saw, we saw no impact on credit score based on employees. So it's not something that ties into score. You just need to know that it's readily available. Or when there's only one employee, answer that with a startup revenue has been established. So how would that work? Well, it's not going to show sales here. If you're a brand new startup and you haven't filed taxes yet or an annual report with your Secretary of State, it's just not going to show that information. They don't have it. But you have to understand the minute that they report that to the Secretary of State, then it becomes public, public record. And they'll know both your number of employees and the number of sales that you actually have as well. Regarding RingCentral phone number, on a training you state we could use the same number as a telephone number and as a fax number. Doesn't that look bad? And how would that work? It doesn't look bad. All that matters is you can't leave a fax number off an application. If you're filling out an application, you don't ever want there to be a field blank besides social if you don't want to provide a personal guarantee. So it doesn't matter if your fax number is the same. If you leave the fax number field blank because you don't have a fax number, that could be an issue. But lenders and credit issuers are not going to deny you credit because they see your fax number and your toll-free number are the same. And how would that work? And how does that work? Well, you could just ask RingCentral. If you tell RingCentral you need a fax, you want it to be the same as your phone, then they can usually do so. That's what I did when I originally got my RingCentral number and said, hey, look, here's the number. I want a fax number too. And they're like, we'll just make your fax number your number. I'm like, cool. Didn't know you could do that. They're like, you can. I'm like, perfect. Do that. It saves me from having to remember 2 numbers. And that caller would have an option to either fax or request a contact person. No, Igor, what you're talking about here is something that's called a voice over IP. And with a voice over IP, it would recognize it instantly. So if somebody tried to send a fax to a number that could be both, then it would just pick up that it's a fax. And then usually what happens is the fax comes into your email as a PDF. So for RingCentral, for example, if my number was 555-1212 and somebody called me, then 555-1212, I pick up, hey, what's up? They're like, hey, what's up? If they call 555-1212 and fax, then the fax goes in, my phone doesn't ring, and it shows up in my email as a PDF. That's the way that most of those have worked from experience. And I think that my question is regarding cash credit. All along, I've read that we would get 250,000, but now it says 150. Says 250,000, 150,000. Please clarify. Well, it depends. There's no limit of credit you can get, right? It's the same in the consumer world. If I go to you and go, how much credit can you get in Visa and MasterCards? Well, there's no limit. You could get indefinite amounts of credit. When I talk about the 150, that's a different program. So we're talking about two things and combining them. You're talking about, first thing you said is $250,000 in business credit. Well, you can get unlimited amounts of business credit. I mean, you could get millions of dollars of actual established business credit. But on this unsecured program, the loan program, which we consider to be a lending program that's, as you see, separate from the business credit, then that's when you're going to get $150,000 max on this the first time through the program. You wait 6 months, a year, and reapply, then the source will typically be able to get you more. But the highest we've seen, and I'm not even saying that really is the cap, right? I'm just saying the highest we've seen that we're comfortable with being put out there is somebody coming in and getting $100,000 to $150,000 in one setting to get cash credit cards with a personal guarantee. We've never promoted this at 250 ever because we've never seen that high of an amount, so we've never promoted it that way. But yeah, it is possible to get 250,000 in business credit, which is the credit you get without the personal guarantee, without the credit check. But in this, with one setting, the most we've ever seen them get is 150. Not to say it couldn't be more. It's just the most that we've actually seen somebody get. So maybe somebody with really high limits and multiple guarantors can get more. We just haven't seen that case. How can you find out what something is on a report if you don't know what it is it's reporting? You can contact Experian to ask them the specifics. It's the easiest thing to do is inquire with their customer service if you've enrolled for the credit monitoring, or to contact them directly and ask them. But what you're going to find is that they will rarely, if ever, tell you that. The answer really is you're not going to know, because even if you call Experian, Equifax, or D&B, which we have done and we've seen clients do, they will not. I'm not going to say, I never say never. I don't like to say never. So I'm not going to say it's not possible and that it never can happen. But I can tell you we've never seen a case where they will give you that information, period. It's just not how business credit reports work. Business credit reports work in a way where they show you the trade line information, not the creditor information. And it's weird for people because people are used to seeing credit information or creditor information on a report, not these type of accounts. But the reality is that that's just not how business credit works. And in the cases that we've seen where people have contacted the business credit reporting agencies to ask them that question and to ask them those questions, then again, what we found in those cases is that they will not give you the information. You could try, but you're more than likely not going to be given the information. But you really should know. I mean, most people don't just accidentally have 100 accounts on their business credit report. You're typically only going to have a matter of, a handful of accounts or more if you're building business credit. And as you're applying and watching them get added, you should know what those accounts are. If you don't, well, then look at all the credit you think you have that reports to the business credit reporting agencies. Pull your report and start matching up the limits for what's on your report, and you can easily be able to figure it out that way. Okay, so let me see if there's any other questions before we get wrapped up. Definitely, how long? Okay, can you look up, Charlton, type in your company name and your address. Charlton, you just were in the chat wanting that. So type in your company name and your address. Igor, in New York, that's not public record. And you're saying the number of employees, maybe, I don't know what you're referencing, isn't public record. But unfortunately, just so you know, it is. Your revenue, your employees, all that type of information is public record. We just looked at a credit report where it's public record to see employees. That's where they get it from, is they're actually getting it from the Secretary of State. And even though you might not be able to go to your Secretary of State website and get it, Experian and the reporting agencies can. But in most cases, somebody can go in and see your company's annual report. So I would check into that before you say with certainty that that's the case, because I have yet to see a state where you can't get a company's annual report. Usually that information is readily available on the Secretary of State website. You can easily get anybody's annual report, just so you know. Financing, no 250 in cash credit. And again, not sure what your question is. I did a pretty detailed job of answering that question. On the unsecured financing program, in one setting, the most you're going to see somebody gets 150. We've never said 250 because we've never seen that happen. But again, in cash credit without the personal guarantee through the business credit builder, somebody could easily get, in fleet credit, cash credit, no personal guarantee credit, they could easily get, you know, $250,000 or more in business credit. There's no limit. There's also not necessarily a limit here either. Just in one setting, they can get 150. And then again, if they come back 6 months or a year later to get more, they very well can. So they could very well in 2, 3, 4, 5 funding rounds get to 250 or higher, but we're only talking about one setting here. So we're talking about two different things. I asked about knowing who it is because we have something reporting negatively, a late payment, but do not know what it is so we can fix it. Well, you don't need to know what it is to fix it, BJ. All you have to do is you got to find the reporting agency that it's with. Well, first of all, if you're using the business credit builder, just use the business credit builder to fix the account. I mean, you can easily do that right through the finance suite. You just go to business credit builder. I'm pretty sure that's in step 2 or 4. I don't remember offhand. So let me go here. So in step 4, 4.7, you go to fix inaccuracies. You figure out which reporting agency is with, and then you go right here to update D&B, update Experian, or update Equifax report. So just by clicking, you can actually go to right where you need to go with the actual business reporting agency, dispute the account, and I can't tell you it'll get deleted, but BJ, I will tell you that in our experience, 80 to 90% of the time you follow this process to dispute, the account is deleted. So I'm not guaranteeing, I can't tell you or guarantee that it might be, but I will tell you that 80 to 90% of the time that we've seen, I don't think we've seen really a case. I say 80 to 90%, but I don't recall any case where somebody disputed an account like that and didn't get it deleted, but I don't want to tell you with 100% certainty it's going to happen. Just go right in here. It's simple. 4.7, you can easily dispute that and get that actual updated. How much does each credit report cost? Well, it depends. I mean, the reporting agencies are all a little bit different from each other, and what they charge is a little bit different from each other. So it depends on exactly how you're doing. So for example, you can easily come in here and you can easily go in, and I'm trying to type in something here because somebody had asked for the business credit report. It just depends is the answer. Every reporting agency charges something different. They charge it, they'll pay it, you could pay it in bundles, for example, and buy them in bundles, but you can spend anywhere between $30 and $100 to pull somebody's business credit report. If you're going to be using it and you want to pull a bunch of different credit reports, then you can actually get set up pretty easily with Experian, for example, or with Equifax or with D&B. And then as a result of that and getting set up with them, you can go in and pull them for, cheap. $50 a report. They've got options. We've got options less than $10, where we've seen options less than $10 where you can pull the business credit report if you're going to do it in volume. And they usually have a minimum where you've got to pay at least $200 to $500 or something like that. So it's all over the board. Depends on the reporting agency, depending on how many ports you're going to pull. And I'll tell you what you're going to do, though. If you want the cheapest way to get business credit reports, we use a service called Credit Safe, and Credit Safe is a fantastic company out there, and they gave us a really good deal. We ended up getting, for less than $1,000, we get 50,000 credit reports for less than $1,000. So we use that a lot for our free consultations because we can't give away Experian credit reports. Experian, D&B, and Equifax won't let that happen. But what we can actually do is we actually can give away a Credit Safe report, which is pretty cool. So you can definitely do that. It just depends on exactly, how many reports you're pulling, those type of things as well. And I'm trying to look and see what other questions we may have here. Okay, back to the cash credit limits. For a client with a viable guarantor, they'll be able to get 150 with the guarantee and also 250 with the EIN. Igor, I don't know how many different ways I can answer kind of the same question here. So the first of all, as I mentioned, multiple times, that they can get up to $150,000 in one setting with a personal guarantee on the unsecured business credit card program. That's the one that we don't consider to be real business credit because they have to have good credit to qualify. There's no limit on the amount of business credit somebody can get. There's not. It's like me asking you, how much Visa and MasterCard credit can you get? What's your cap on your personal credit? There is no cap. There's no ceiling of how much credit you can obtain. As you just saw with a lot of business credit reports that we look at, people are getting large amounts of credit in one setting. It's just a matter of how much you apply for. So if you build your business credit year after year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, there is no cap. You can't go tell somebody they're going to get $250,000 in business credit. In doing so, you're creating a false expectation because you don't know the time frame. It depends on how much credit they're actually applying for. So in unsecured, the most we've seen is somebody come in actual financing is get about $150,000 in unsecured credit. That's the most we've seen in one setting. If they have multiple guarantors, multiple corporations, maybe it's possible to see more. We haven't seen that. That's why we put that cap on there. It's not to say this is the cap. This is just the highest cap we've seen. So that's the highest cap that we put out there. When it comes to how much can somebody get in real business credit without a personal guarantee, there's no cap to that. It's endless. It matters on how much credit somebody's going to continue to apply for. Okay, that is what it is. So hopefully I've explained that now in a way where that makes a little bit more sense. And also, Charlton, I've looked and I don't see, you said you've been in for, I don't see your information, by the way. I've tried to look up I've tried to look up your company, Boyer Development, but I don't see your company in here for some reason. I'm going to try typing in I'll try typing in the city and the state as well. But so far, I'm not finding a match in there. Maybe I am actually. Yeah, wait a minute, 11251. Okay, actually, I think I just found a match. Okay, I did find a match here. And we'll pull that up. I'll pull that up and I'll show you so you can see exactly what that looks like. So it just doesn't look like you have trade lines reporting on Experian very much. So what you have is your score is not very high because you only have one account. So here's your score. You're being recommended for $1,600 worth of credit, but it looks like the only account that you've obtained that's reporting to Experian is one. You have one net 30 account. You have a $200 limit, a $200 balance. It is showing you're paid as agreed, but the score is not very high because your balance and your limit are basically the same. So now that's not to say you might have 5 other accounts that report to D&B or 3 others that report to Equifax. I don't know. But again, everybody, it's important to note that the amount of credit you have depends on how many accounts you're applying for, how many accounts you're getting approved for, how many accounts you're using. You know, you looked at credit reports where people have 7, 10, 12 trade lines just to Experian. Those people have another 5, 10, 20 trade lines reporting to Dun & Bradstreet, et cetera. So as we look at in the Business Credit Builder, it's important to note that you got to determine what accounts you actually are applying for. Because if you're applying for accounts, so let's go, for example, to look at round 1, and let's look at vendor accounts here. If we look at Uline, for example, well, we don't even need to do that. We can just go right here. It's what's awesome about the Business Credit Builder. So we see here that Quill only reports to D&B. Gimpler's reports to Experian and D&B. This reports to all 3, okay? Uline reports to Experian, D&B, Experian, D&B. So you've got to look at the accounts you got that actually reported to Experian, the ones you got credit with, the ones that you've used the credit, the ones that you paid on, and then you've got to give them about 60 days and they report. But in your case, you're only showing one account here that you've got the approved with Equifax. So you'd want to go through and figure out what other accounts you applied for in the Business Credit Builder and what ones, if you're using the Business Credit Builder, and what ones. Uline, Gimpler, and Quill, and Granger. So what you want to do is go through and figure out how often. So for example, this reports to D&B, so we wouldn't expect to see Granger on there. Experian, that might be the Uline you got, you would probably know better. Gimplers and Quill, if you've got those, the question becomes, have you used these? And this reports to D&B. So the only one of the ones you described that report are Gimplers and Uline are the only ones that report to Experian. The other ones are probably on your D&B, and all these very well might be on your D&B report. So one of these 2 is the account that's reporting. What you need to know and how to know that is which one has a $200 limit. That would tell you which one of these it is. And if the other one you've got, you make sure you got to give them at least 60 days to report it. Sometimes they report it every quarter. So whatever one doesn't have a $200 limit, I'd call them and say, I've been using the account. I paid the bill as agreed. Remember, you got to spend more than $50 to get it reported to the business credit reporting agencies. And you might find they, for example, like Quill, only report something quarterly, which is possible. Maybe they just haven't reported it yet. It's worth checking into and giving them a call. Okay, so I don't have any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully you got a lot of good stuff out of today. This has been crazy, right? Definitely different than anything we've ever done before. But what's cool is that now you get to see the actual business credit building process and what it looks like on a real credit report. You get to see how anybody can pull your reports. You get to see that employees and revenue and public records and UCC filings and your trade lines, that they all are available to anybody that wants them. You get to see exactly the different amount of scores that we could access, what your credit quality determines how much credit you're getting recommended from. We've seen people that think they had no credit and actually have bad credit. We've seen people that think they have credit and they don't really have very much credit established because it's not reporting to Experian itself. We've seen people that come in and get small limits, build it up, get high limits, and are 60 days into this process. We've seen people 90 days in the process that are getting even higher limit accounts. We've seen people even further into the process that are now getting $60,000 loans being recommended for high amounts of credit. Okay, and what's interesting about that is when we look at the Trump profile, that person's getting recommended for 25% as much as what the Trump organization is. It's a $2 billion revenue organization per the report. So it goes to show that even the small guys can do this. It's just a matter of following the steps. And we saw in real life what it looks like to follow the steps, to go from not having credit all the way into getting credit, see that big jump in score. And then again, we've even been able to see as a result of that, what that means with credit recommendations and these other factors as well. So again, it's been an interesting day. We've had a chance to look at a lot of really cool stuff, and hopefully this is meaningful. Hopefully you get a lot of good information about what really is possible with business credit. Again, to me, this is probably one of the best reports I've seen to really reflect what is. Somebody that comes in and gets the small accounts, $100, $400, comes in and starts getting the high limit credit cards of $4,000, $9,000, and even with a defaulted account, is still being recommended for a good amount of credit, even as a nonprofit, even being actually set up not too long ago. So pretty cool. You got a lot of good information out of today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Let us know. We're here to help, do anything in our power to help you be successful with business credit. So let us know. I'm going to wrap up and see if there's any final questions. I've used them. Well, again, Charlton, I already kind of gave you some. You can email it. Yeah, you can go ahead and email me. Ty@creditsuite.com. You can send me an email. But again, I've already kind of advised you is exactly what to do. You've only got 2 accounts that you think are supposed to be reported. One we clearly see is reported, so we already know it is. So all you're asking about is one account that isn't reported. And in that case, you just have to figure out which one that is. You'll know because the one that we saw has a $200 limit, and the one that's not, just call them and just ask them. Or if you're working with our advising team, just ask our advising team and they'll give you some advice. But the best thing is to say, look, I've been paying on this account since June or July or whenever it may be. And then as a result, it's not reported, and they'll be able to tell you. It might just be that they only report it quarterly. The only way to know is just to ask. But you only have one other account that's missing there that you would expect to see. The other are on your D&B report. So what I would do if I were you is I would go ahead and pull your D&B report. I would get your D&B monitoring. Your D&B report looks like I should have 4 or 5. You mentioned 4 trades. It looks like it should have those 4 trades on your D&B report. So I would look at that. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. I am not as I also check my main email that I check, and a lot of other people check as well, is info@creditsuite.com. That's the best one, info@creditsuite.com. You'll get me and a bunch of our team. So if I'm on webinars and stuff like this, I have emails pouring in. If I can't get to the question, somebody else can. But again, if you're working with our advising team, bring them in too. But all you have to do is call that one creditor and ask them when they report why it's not reported. They'll be able to give you insight and either get it fixed or it just hasn't been reported yet, which is very possible. Definitely could happen. And I check your D&B report because that's where most of them are. So no other questions. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks everybody very much for taking the time to attend today. Hopefully you got a lot of great information. And again, if we could be of any assistance, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Info@creditsuite.com is one of the best emails to get in touch with us. Or again, if you have access to Finance Suite, you can go right here and we answer all kinds of questions right through the chat as well. And you can also get with our support team. You know how to get in touch with our support team. So any of those type of things we can help with, let us know. Thanks everybody very much. Hope you have a great day.